Hi booktube, Aaron here. I hope you're doing very well. Today I'm going to do a book haul, and I've got a pile of books that I've accumulated over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I suppose. And well, in one way I'm quite glad I'm doing it, as that there are two kinds of videos that I quite like to make that I just don't feel like I can at the moment. One will be a reading update, but I haven't finished anything for a few weeks because I'm in the middle of various projects and read-alongs and buddy reads and things, and I'm sort of I'm trying to kind of stretch my reading out a bit and spread it wide, and so I haven't finished anything. I'm in the middle of quite a few things, and so there's not too much I can really talk about on that front at the moment. And then I maybe could have done a tag video or something like that, but I've sort of lost the plot really on tags at the moment, and have kind of lost track of which tags have been tagged in and things like that. And so at some point I'll tidy all of that up and catch up on some tags. But instead today I've got a little miscellany of books. I've got, there's some non-fiction, some fiction, some poetry, and yeah, just quite a range of stuff. Quite a few from little free libraries, and we'll start with one that I picked up from a little free library at work. A bit different to some of the stuff I read, but I think it will appeal to me, and I think it will work as a nice book to have as a refresher after a heavy read. And I'm in the middle of quite a heavy read at the moment, so I feel I might need it quite soon. This is Red Sky at Night, the Book of Lost Countryside Wisdom by Jane Struthers, with a really lovely cover there. And I do have two pet rabbits, so I am biased. And it is basically a collection of folk wisdom, of sayings and traditions from the British countryside, and it's going through and explaining it and exploring it. So there's the meanings behind certain sayings, like as mad as a March hare, and what else was there in there? I feel like there are a few other things in there, but there's also practical things like how to build a thatched roof and a dry stone wall, and there's a little chapter on Morris dancing, it looks like, and things like that. So I think it'll be fun, and they're just these little short snippets. It's nothing all that long, so it's almost like a mini encyclopedia of folk wisdom. So I'm looking forward to giving it a go at some point. And then also from the same little free library, I've taken a few things from there, and I have dropped off things there, and I'm feeling like I can't drop anything off there yet because I'm still waiting for some of the things I've dropped off to go. Maybe they'll never go. Maybe that means I should stop taking things. But I do tend to wait around and see which books are sort of sticking around before I take any, because I don't want to take something that seems like other people are going to want more. But this one caught my fancy. This is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote Hamnet, which I haven't read, but I think around the time I started on booktube, a lot of people were reading it and talking about it, and so the author's name stood out to me. And when this book came out a couple of years ago now, I think, people were talking about this as well. And I couldn't really remember much of what people had said about it and what it was about. And then I was reading the back, and I will read the synopsis, it's quite short. It says, in the winter of 1561, Lucrezia, Duchess of Ferrara, is taken on an unexpected visit to a country villa by her husband, Alfonso. As they sit down to dinner it occurs to her that their journey to this lonely place has a sinister purpose. He intends to kill her. And on the sort of the first level, it sort of speaks to my love of the Gothic. There's something very, I think, Radcliffean and almost a kind of Angela Carter thing going on there, a sort of Bluebeard's Castle kind of thing. The other note it struck was the poem My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. And then it turns out that one of the epigraphs, or epigram, I'm never sure whether it's epigram or epigraph. I think it's epigraph. Anyway, one of them is the first two lines of My Last Duchess. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. Or is that the first two lines? Now I'm double guessing myself. And it's also got something from the Decameron as well by Boccaccio. And so once I'd then seen that there was that connection to Browning and the sort of inspiration behind that poem, then I was all for it. And so I'm looking forward to reading this. And then there was one more that was from that little free library. And I got this because I was intrigued by the author. It's an author who's come up on BookTube, mainly when it comes to his non-fiction. I think he's a sort of an essayist and a historian and a biographer, but he also writes fiction, which I wasn't aware of. But he seems to write quite a lot of fiction, and that's A.N. Wilson. And this is A Jealous Ghost. There's no synopsis on the back, but one of the blurbs sort of almost serves as a synopsis. It says it's a convincing, compelling, and icy reworking of Henry James's The Turn of the Screw, in which Sally, an American girl obsessed by the subject of her PhD thesis, quits university to take on the job of a temporary nanny in an English country house. Sally is so manipulated by words, so deluded by her own emotional fantasies, that she interferes with James's original narrative and screws it into terrifying reality. So it seems to be a kind of love letter to the book, and a kind of echo in a sort of slightly more modern setting. It doesn't look all too long, but I'm really intrigued, and I didn't get on with The Turn of the Screw that much when I read it the first time. So hopefully this might hopefully this might help me change my mind and give me a way in to it, for my next reading. And then a book from a different little free library, and this is a little segment in the middle where it's sort of not really new books by some of my favourite writers, but books by some of my favourite writers that I haven't read yet, because they're not new writers at all. First up is Joseph Conrad. This is Victory, and it says on the back that it's it's a guy trying to sort of run away from life. So Axel Heist, the disenchanted Swede, becomes involved in the operation of a coal company on a remote island in the Malay archipelago. When that fails, he turns his back on humanity until, once again, he is drawn into contact with the world by a girl whom he chivalrously rescues and bears off to his island retreat. The arrival of a sinister trio of Europeans bent on robbery calls down on the characters' heads the thunder of doom, which has been gathering in the final chapters. So yeah, it sounds good. It sounds like a lot of the stuff that you kind of go to Conrad for, um, and we'll see how it holds up. But I really enjoy Conrad and find him really fascinating. And you kind of see there the way that the protagonist kind of seems quite odd and um, almost misanthropic, and certainly it's a bit odd, quote unquote, saving a young woman and then taking her to your own little private island. It's certainly not normal behaviour. And then these intruders coming and just the sort of the dynamics of that. I found really well, seems really intriguing to me. So we'll see if it lives up to my expectations. The other favourite author of mine, who I really need to read a lot more by, but I haven't read anything I haven't liked by him yet, and that's Thomas Hardy. And I got a Penguin Classic of the Mayor of Casterbridge. It's, I think, rather charmingly beaten up. It feels like it'll be fine, sort of structurally to read. I don't think it's going to fall apart on me. But I do quite like the fact that it's been beaten up a bit and it's been well read by someone. It's got some lovely illustrations in there as well. So this might be a good one for Victober, even though in the back of my head I was thinking that this year I should really get round to some more Dickens and some maybe Elizabeth Gaskell or Trollope, or so someone I've been neglecting, but part of me just wants to go back to Thomas Hardy instead. So we'll see. And I've got one or two other Thomas Hardy books that I haven't read on the shelves, so I'll have to decide which to go with. Next up, a book I found in a charity shop, in the same charity shop where I found The Mayor of Casterbridge, and this one I kind of picked up on a whim. In this charity shop, paperbacks like The Mayor of Casterbridge are 50p, and then it's £1 for a hardcover. And I recognised the author of this and thought I'd just give it a go. So we'll see. This is An Area of Darkness by V.S. Naipaul, and it's essentially a travelogue of V.S. Naipaul going to India and then just examining it. I think he's sort of discovering it for himself, and I don't know, it seems like he has or could have a unique take, I don't know, on India. I think his grandfather was Indian and then moved to the West Indies, and so Naipaul grew up in the West Indies, and yet has this, and then was educated in Britain, and so he has this familial heritage, from these deep ties with India, and yet at least the synopsis here gives the impression that it's his first time visiting there and that he's got a fair bit maybe to reckon with and to work out, and so it's maybe as much a journey of self-discovery as it is a travelogue. So we'll see. Part of me is not too sure about it. I'm a little, I don't know, feeling a little bit of trepidation about reading it. But it's a name I recognised and have sort of seen or sort of heard people mention it, although I'm not entirely sure where. But I thought I'd give it a go. So if you're at all familiar with the work of V.S. Naipaul, then yeah, and you have any further suggestions, then let me know. And then the last four are the kind of books that I think two of them were books that had kind of been sitting in a shopping trolley on World of Books, and I was just sort of waiting for some other books to come with them. And at the moment, they have like a buy three get one free kind of thing. So I picked up another couple of books to fill that up. One was based on current interest, or maybe the other one was as well. I'll get to each in turn. The first, and I'm quite excited about all of these. The first was Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts by Christopher de Hamel. Christopher de Hamel is the word's gone out of my head. An antiquarian specialising in medieval manuscripts, and it's sort of reckoned that he's probably handled more manuscripts than probably any other person currently alive. So he's worked at Sotheby's and in various sort of university libraries and collections, and so he's got an intimate knowledge with a lot of very famous manuscripts, and it seems like this is a sort of collection of sort of mini histories of some of these manuscripts, and maybe something of a personal history of his relationship with some of them. That's the impression that I get. So I know there's the Book of Kells in here, which I recognise. I mean, it's quite famous. There's the Hengvert, Chaucer, and well, we'll see what else there is. I'm not at all familiar with the world of manuscripts, really, but I think there's something just immediately sort of gravitational, just how lovely they look, and this is full of illustrations. So in the centre, we've got these sort of colour blocks, and you you just see from the spine how many illustrations they are all the way through. But then in most of the book, it's black and white, but it's still really, really lovely, and it feels nice. Just even though it's just a standard Penguin History paperback, it feels lovely. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. Whenever I do a book haul, it's hard trying to predict which book I'm going to read next, but that one is towards the top of the list out of all of these. Next up is a book that was also in my cart because I've got the second book, the follow-up book to this, that I was given, and I felt like I wanted to actually read the first one first. And this is Richard Holmes, Coleridge Early Visions. So this is the first half of his two-part biography of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And if I can, I'll just pause quickly. And so then this is the second part, Darker Reflections, which is a fair bit thicker, but together they form Richard Holmes's assessment of Coleridge's life. And I recently read a great biography of William Wordsworth by Jonathan Bate called Radical Wordsworth, and this was, I think, pretty much at the top of the list of the further reading, if I'm remembering correctly. And so I knew I wanted to follow on from Jonathan Bate with Richard Holmes. So at some point relatively soon, I'll be diving into the two of those, I think. And then the last two. This next one is really based on my current reading. I've been reading Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman, which is terrific. We'll see how it goes, but I think it might be one of my favourite things I've read so far this year. And quite a few characters keep on, well, they keep on quoting various writers from throughout history. A lot of Russian writers, some of whom are familiar to me, some of whom aren't. But they also mention people like Hegel and stuff. But really, I think that the author who's mentioned the most, or at least recognisably, the one who's sticking with me, is Heinrich Heine. So I picked up his selected verse just to become a little more familiar with his writing. This is translated with an introduction by Peter Branscombe. Not at all familiar with his translations. It's a bit of an odd one for me. I have a bit of a bugbear sometimes with poetry in translation, where I don't particularly like it when you have prose translations of poetry. And maybe it's something I'll have to get over with some poets, but if I show you the page, so this is what it looks like. We have a poem there in original German, and then essentially as a footnote, you then have a prose translation underneath. And I don't know, I think it'll just feel a bit odd that really what I'm reading is the footnotes to the poems in German. And it does sometimes get me wondering, like, who are these books for? That the actual translation, that the kind of thing that you're buying this for, is sort of shoved down to the bottom of the page. And there have been a few other translations like this that I haven't bought, that purely based on the fact that it was these prose translations. However, I thought it'd be safe to go with the Penguin Classic. There were one or two other translations that I wasn't too sure about, so I thought I'd play safe and go with Penguin. And also then I opened it up and actually read just a little bit of one of the translations, and it was great. So I think I'll get over it quite quickly once I get used to the formatting and stuff like that. And in the good thing, the positive of a prose translation of poetry is that you sometimes, the one I always think of is the Oxford World Classic translation of Baudelaire's Flowers of Evil, which is really, really clunky, or at least I found it to be really clunky, and didn't particularly like. I know from other translations I think I quite like Baudelaire, but I didn't like that translation. And so the thing you're getting away from, if you're doing a prose translation, is that you're not making it really clunky to fit an English rhyme scheme or sort of metrical pattern that maybe doesn't really suit the spirit of the original poem. And maybe the translator, maybe a very gifted translator, but maybe isn't a gifted poet. And so they can get across the meaning and the power of the writing in prose, and that will come through, and maybe that will make the poem come alive for you. And maybe that's better than them doing a sort of hackneyed job of the poem in verse. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm looking forward to getting to know Heinrich Heine a little bit better. And he also wrote essays and I think sort of philosophy and stuff. And so if I get on with his poetry, I might see if I can find any more of his stuff in English translation. And then the last book, which as well I'm very excited about. I seem to remember just coming across it by chance. It might have even been recommended for me on World of Books, and just knew very, very quickly that it was something that I wanted to read. This is Aesthetes and Decadence of the 1890s, with a wonderful yellow cover there. and it's about the decadent movement. It's an anthology of poetry and prose by many of the decadents in Britain in the sort of fin de siècle period, and so it's got lots of wonderful Aubrey Beardsley drawings, such as the cover in there. It's got Oscar Wilde in there. Is it just I feel like it's just the Ballad of Reading Gaol, but let me double check. Where are you, Oscar? No, it's got a few other things in there. So it's got one of his observations, The Decay of Lying. It's got Salome with Beardsley's illustrations, Phrases and Philosophies for the Use of the Young, Sympathy in Yellow, The Harlot's House, Impression du Matin, Hela, and then the Ballad of Reading Gaol. It ends with W.B. Yeats as well, who was certainly in his earlier period really quite influenced by the decadence. But yeah, it's got Aubrey Beardsley, Max Beerbohm, who else stood out? Ernest Dowson, Lionel Johnson, Arthur Symonds, and then Yeats. And then in the appendix, it's got some Walter Pater, some J.K. Housemans, and yeah, I think that's basically everyone who sort of seemed familiar to me. And so yeah, it's going to be fun and interesting. It's a period that I enjoy, and other than Oscar Wilde, I haven't, and Yeats, I haven't really explored all too much, and so I'm looking forward to getting to know it a little bit better. And I should say this is a revised edition with an introduction and notes by Carl Beckson. So yeah, it's just a really fetching book, a little beaten up, but I really like the look of it. And so that's it. That is the book haul. So I'll show you everything. So we've got Aesthetics and Decadence of the 1890s. We've got Selected Verse by Heinrich Heine. We've got Richard Holmes, Coleridge, Early Visions. We've got Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts by Christopher de Hamel. We've got An Area of Darkness by V.S. Naipaul. We've got Thomas Hardy, The Mayor of Casterbridge. We've got Joseph Conrad, Victory. We've got A.N. Wilson, A Jealous Ghost. Maggie O'Farrell, The Marriage Portrait. And then Red Sky at Night by Jane Struthers. So there we go. That is another book haul. Still relatively big, very cheap, and yeah, as I often say, probably won't be the last one, but hopefully will be the last one for a little bit, as I'm gonna have to do some chin stroking and some moving around to work out where some of these will fit. Others there'll be space for, but I think I'm gonna have to do some bookshelf reorganisation at some point. So that's the book haul. If you're familiar with any of these authors and you have any opinions, whether they're benign or strong or malign, let me know. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.